I'm going to be going over Knuckle Sandwich first of all. I'm going to play through it, and then I will start taking some questions. So let's go. This is Knuckle Sandwich if you're not already familiar.
You'll be creating another monster.
Okay, looks like we're doing Rave Dash.
I suppose you all know how to use one of these things, but in case you don't, you just press down on this lever with your thumb and then...
He's dead.
Oh, I'm getting somewhere.
So yeah, I won't play it all the way through because the second drop is, I mean, pretty similar. What's up everybody? What's up Brock? What's up Josan? Austin, Jeffrey, Nathan, Felix. So, I mean, we can start taking questions and I can also just start from the top. Whoa, that is big. Would anybody like me to start anywhere specific, or shall I just go from the drums and work my way down? Yeah, Felix, it's I'm in the UK, it's 3:03 AM right now. Those real rhythm hours. So let's start with the drums. With my drums, I haven't gone crazy on the layering because they are drums which I have like previously put together and exported. So they are made up of layers, but not in this project. They're just kicks and snares and claps that I've exported another time. In this project, you'll notice that I've got every group at -10. Every group's going into the master at -10, and then literally on this project, I have 2 glue compressors on the master, and that is it, and a limiter. Nothing crazy is going on in this project for how chunky it sounds. It's pretty insane. Start with the drums. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So kick, I haven't needed to do a lot to the kick. It was already a heavily compressed kick, something that I did in another session. I just rolled off some high end. I think this is the reverse kick that goes into the drop. It's literally just that kick reversed. Just gives it some kind of, like, sucks into the drop. The clap is a Vengeance clap. Some old school samples there. I've just got some delay on it. I've automated the delay, so it cuts off as soon as the next kick happens after that one. And like for the drums, that's really it. For the hi-hats, it's really just quarter note ride and a crash. That is literally it. And then we have an offbeat hi-hat on the second phrase in there. So yeah, as far as drums go, they're really simple drums. They were just made in another project. They were pretty much ready to go, just a drag and drop jobby. So that is drums. What's my rule for kicks? I mean, generally, my rule for kicks is just something. I like to, obviously you need the low end, but I like something that has a nice transient, like a nice click to it as well. That's important. You can see here on the 10K, there's a nice little, we've got a nice little bit of high end there. That's important to me, like a clicky kick. And I just like to make sure that they're obviously hitting at 0. That's pretty much it for my general rules on kicks. Scroll down here. How do I make them sound punchy in the mix? So actually that comes back to what I was just saying. As long as you've got like a kick drum that has like a nice click on it and you've got the side chaining set up correctly, I use volume shaper. And I've got a volume shaper on every group that isn't the drum group, except vocals. Obviously you don't sidechain vocals unless you want some kind of special effect on them. But I would say that generally that people tend to over compress their drums because they think that's the way to make them stand out in the mix, but actually it's everything else around the drums balanced correctly with the drums that allow them to come through enough, because they're always going to be the loudest thing in the mix, but because they're only short snappy sounds, they can sometimes get lost if everything else is taken over. So having your sidechain set up correctly, and by that I mean having like enough time, let me get my mid sidechain up. So having enough time here for the kick to actually fully
make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer in every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
Fully play through before the rest of the sound comes back in again. That is how I get my drums to sit really well. It really comes down, I mean, if I was to play this without any of the sidechain, if I turn the sidechain of the mids off, you will really hear the difference. I mean, they're still kind of punchy, but the track just doesn't have that kind of pulse, that bounce to it without the sidechain. Yeah, I'd say it's all in the mixing and the sidechain as far as punchy drums go. Low end mixing, kick sub, bassline. So as far as low end mixing goes, kick sub, my sub, well, in this track I haven't even used a separate sub. My sub is in the patches, but the low end and the kick don't interact because they're so heavily sidechained. What do I mean by sidechain the mids? I mean by mids, I mean my bass sounds. I call them the mids. And I duck them out. I duck the volume of them every time one of the drums hit to allow them to come through clearly. And also it adds bounce to the track as well. Do you have anything on your drums group? Yeah. So I saturate my groups. Generally I'll chuck a saturator on. Like a lot of the time I won't add any drive, but the saturator is still adding some higher harmonics even without drive. I've got a glue compressor just to kind of balance the kick and the clap together, and then I've got this washout effect rack, which is basically just a filter and a reverb together, and I use this in every track when in any kind of build.
These things, but in case you don't,
it just takes out the lows, adds a bit of reverb, and builds tension until the drop. Sorry, let me scroll up and see some of these that I missed. Do I worry about adjusting for latency if I put my sidechain after a bunch of other plugins effects on the channel? No, I've never had a problem with latency so far. What I'll do is I'll chuck a volume shaper on every group after all of the effects, and no, I've never had a problem with latency. How loud do I usually shoot for my track to be? And do I generally mix my groups to be at -10? So how loud, I mean, let's be honest, as loud as possible. I like to obviously have my track peaking at 0 and just sound as loud and as full as possible without sounding ridiculously compressed and saturated. Ambush is, my latest track, Ambush, is probably on the more excessive side of the compression scale. And as far as mixing my groups at -10, I don't always do that. I think this was just one of the times I was trying it out. A lot of times I'll just have all of my groups at 0 and just slam straight into the master. Do a bit of, I mean, you can see here that my groups are at -10, but once I hit this glue compressor on the master, I'm giving it 10 dB of makeup anyway. So I'm kind of like bringing all of these groups back up to 0 anyway. But I mean, I would actually advise to do it this way because it does allow you a lot of headroom. Once you get to your master, obviously if all of your groups are at 0 and all of your sounds are at 0, once you get to the master, you're going to be way above 0. So I would advise taking them all down, going into the master not so hot, and then you can bring up your levels and adjust accordingly. Then you get a lot more leeway if you have your groups quieter. Let's look at the mids group. Yeah, Brock, we'll get into the mids group shortly. My track, yeah, so I was just talking about my tracks are at -10, so I don't go into the master too hot. Do I start making a song with a build up or a drop? Well, I mean, generally all the time a drop. I find that if I start with an intro first, I really struggle to find a drop to fit it. I'll usually start with the most energetic part of the track first, the actual drop. I might do like a kick build into it just to help me figure out some kind of pre-drop vocal and a bit of a drop, but I'll do the bulk of the track first. Sorry, I've got a screen right here. So I would have started Knuckle Sandwich, say this part here would have been the start of Knuckle Sandwich, like a bit of a build and then the drop. And then I build outwards from there. I'll figure out the intro using like sounds from the drop and stuff, and fill out the rest of the song from there. Where is that vocal sample from? Sounds like an old movie. I don't know where it's actually from, but I got it from Splice. I'm pretty sure. Don't know where it is.
I suppose you all know how to use one of these things, but in case you don't, you just press down on this lever with your thumb and then pull the trigger.
Yeah, it's just that. I got that from Splice. I just liked how it says
Lever with your thumb.
pull the lever with your thumb and then boom.
With your thumb and then...
Let's see some more questions. Background elements in the drops, risers, Atmos, downers. Yeah, so let's have a look here. First of all, I don't usually do this. This was a one-off. I've got a load of different sounds in one channel. I don't know how or why this ended up this way, but they're just little weird. Yeah, I don't know why I put them all in the same channel. I guess I was trying to save space or something. But I've just got... Let's open all these up first. Oh, actually, that's important too. So as well as the actual mids themselves, I have a Tisoki. It's like this kind of, I guess it was a bass noise, but I took the lows out, and it's just this. And with the basses playing at the same time, you don't really hear it, but it just adds a little bit of high end. Yeah, it just adds a bit of sheen to the basses. It kind of adds like a small transient too. Like you hear this tiny sound come in before the actual basses do. But yeah, I've just got a couple of rises. Honestly, I didn't go too crazy with this track. This track is literally like 64 tracks in total, whereas I think Rave Dash is more like 150. So yeah, I've just got some small rises every now and then, kind of at the end of every 8 bars and leading into the second 8 bars. But they're just very simple. I don't even think I affected them very heavily. I've just rolled off low end on them to help them sit back in the mix. There's another riser there too. It's just another Vengeance riser. Often I will also, I've got a folder here called risers. I've got a white noise folder here. So I made these with Operator, and I've got different lengths like 2 bar, 4 bar, 8 bar, and I'll usually put these in all my tracks. Like very subtly in the background, I'll have them on the drop and a reverse one leading up into the next phrase. Let's see some more comments. What synth are you using? I use Serum. I pretty much use Serum all the time. I've got Faceplant recently, but it's still pretty new to me. Do I keep my sound design sessions separate from writing? No, not really. Most of the time I make my sound design in my track sessions. But occasionally I've had some sound design sessions where I've made a bunch of just glitchy sounds. Ambush, my latest track, is a good example of that. I made like this folder of some of these names are quite questionable. Do not use this one. So that was just a separate sound design session. Just tried to make the most glitchiest, messed up noises I could. And then Ambush kind of came from those. Any advice for layering basses? Yeah, so if you stick around till the end or till halfway through, when I go into Rave Dash, I think I've done a bit more layering on that one. You'll be able to see. But I mean, my advice would be, most importantly, would be EQing. When it comes to layering anything, I'd say EQing is the most important. You need things to fit together in the frequency spectrum as kind of neatly as possible. When layering, how would you EQ your mids and other effects so it doesn't sound muddy? Well, generally, the muddy area of the frequency spectrum is around 200 to 400 hertz. So I would just be very cautious of the sounds that you're using. So like if we look at these basses, there's not a lot of EQ going on these actually, which is surprising. But the area where you will run into muddy problems is the kind of 2 or even 1 to 500 hertz, that kind of low boxy area. Just be very mindful of your frequencies in that area. You might be needing to put a cut in, like a frequency cut in a lot of your elements. If they have a lot of, if they're too hot in the low mid area. Can I go over some of my techniques in Serum? Yeah, sure, I'll do that in a second. Willie, I've been producing for 17 years and I've been using the name Badklaat, I think 10 years now. Did you put low frequencies in mono and high in stereo? Yeah, so with my tracks, anything below 150 hertz is completely mono. And anything above that is stereo. And the way I'll do that is here, you see with the utility, I've got it on bass mono and I've got the cutoff set to 150 hertz, which means anything below 150 hertz is going to be completely mono. We can solo that and listen. Oh. If you're not wearing headphones or using good speakers, you wouldn't have heard that. But can I show how I've EQ'd my bass layers? Yeah, I just went to do that, and there's actually not a lot of EQing going on. There is this crazy EQ here for the sub because I decided that my patches, the sub wasn't loud enough. Like, I would not recommend to do this, but it did work in this project. Yeah, so there's an almighty peak there, which kind of makes me shudder a bit now, looking back at this. But the EQing isn't crazy. What I generally aim for is a kind of curve on here. You want to generally see that you're from your low end all the way to the high end. You kind of have like a balanced downward slope, if that makes sense. I mean, that's generally what I'll aim for. If I see that the EQ needs some mad adjustments, I will do that. I think in Rave Dash, there's going to be a lot more frequency attention going on there. This track just seemed to fit together really nicely. The master's just literally 2 glue compressors. The mids aren't EQ'd crazily, and it's only like 60 tracks, but yeah, it just fit together really well. Yeah, in some tracks I do the reverb throw where I'll automate the dry wet and chuck it in gaps. When building your kicks and snares for clicks, do you EQ the click in from the sound itself, or are you layering the click in? I mean, that's very dependent on the kick you're trying to use. If you have a kick that you really like the low end thud of, but it doesn't have a decent high end, you can take a transient of another kick, or I mean, you can make transients from anything. The transient's just the very, very, very very first kind of bit you'll hear of the kick before all of the bass content comes in. Do I recycle basses? Yeah, I've got a folder of my basses in WAV format that I'll sometimes use in my little sort of the end of the 8-bar phrase. Do I usually cut 30 hertz and below? No. So a lot of people will advise to do that, but I would advise against it. I mean, for me, if I've ever attempted to cut 30 hertz and below, the song just loses. It just loses some of that low end character. I don't think you should be cutting. If you're playing in a big club, you want those low frequencies. I wouldn't cut below 30 hertz. I would just make sure that your sub and your kick are balanced well, and kind of just leave it to that. Don't be cutting off the low. Do I do any mid-side processing? Yeah, I heavily do mid-side processing. I'll go in with the mid-side EQ setting on here and adjust my sides. I think maybe no, not on the master. There's nothing on the master. Let's open up one of these basses. So for the mid side, for adding sides, I usually use this hyper in Serum, but I keep the size down and the mix down. The mix sounds like shit to me. I just use the mix on this side, the very right hand side mix. Mostly I'll automate that too, but here I've just left it open. But in some of my tracks that I think the sound is too wide, I'll go in with the mid side EQ and tame it in some areas. Let's take that back off. How do I go about variation for different sections of the drop? Call and response, basically. I mean, I don't really have any technical way of going about my variation. For me, it's just trial and error. I'll have my first drop, and I'll just drag around sounds, and I'll hear something in my head, like I'll hear a variation in my head, and try and recreate that. What I like to do is have my kind of where are we? So I like to have my 8-bar kind of loop, and on the very last bar, like the 7th bar, I like to have some kind of variation. Here I'm using a plugin called Effectrix, and so over here, what I'm doing is you can see the automation for it here. So at the end of the 8-bar section, on the 7th bar, or actually, don't know. It just literally kicks in the Effectrix and this little phaser and chorus thing come on. And then for the second 16, I'm using it's literally the same Effectrix on the whole mids group, and there's the stretch effect there, which I've highlighted to give this. Because without that, it would have literally just been the first drop. So yeah, generally I'll go for my sort of 8-bar loop with the end of the 8 bars with a little switch in it. Maybe take out the sub and have a little catchy thing go on. Henry, thank you. I'm glad you like Broken. Do I have any tips on creating motifs with bass patches? Again, I don't really have a technical approach to that. For me, it's just finding something catchy, just something catchy and memorable, and that could be either in the form of either a melody or in the form of the pattern or the rhythm, or both. But for me, there really is no technical approach. It just is kind of playing around and finding little bits that work, basically. How do I fill the space so well in this drop? I think it really comes down to the patches, and maybe it's just a combination of everything. There's like reverb on things, the clap has the delay on it, there's risers and kind of background effects constantly happening. There's a constant chant going on, left, right. So there's just kind of constantly something happening, and on top of that, the mids are really chunky. So yeah, that's how that's filled out. Where was I in the comments? How do you mix your sub bass and what effect do you put on it? So in this track, my sub bass isn't separate. I've got the sub is coming from the patches. But if I was to use a separate sub bass, which I have in Rave Dash, so we'll get into that after. In fact, maybe I will just leave. I'll leave that question for when I open up Rave Dash. Felix is going to sleep. Good night, Felix. When addressing muddiness, how do I determine priorities for competing sounds? Is it a matter of global reduction of the 2 to 400 hertz? See, these are all kind of questions that don't really have a specific answer. It really is a case-by-case thing. Let's say, for example, that I had 2 sounds and they both were super muddy. Then I would address them both separately and see how they fit together. And then you wouldn't need to globally reduce. By globally, I guess Raymond means on the master or on the group overall. But it really is case by case. So I would go through and take out areas that you think are a problem, kind of one by one. Try not to solo things while you're EQing them as well. That's an important thing, because you want to hear how it sounds with everything else playing at the same time. What was the question again? I just lost myself then. Yeah, so priorities for competing sounds. Pick a sound you want to be the one at the front, the most heard, the one with the most attention, and fix the rest around it. Can we dive deeper into Serum? Yeah, sure, we can do that right now. Is Effectrix how you get cool sustained bass variation in a lot of your songs? No, this is the only time I used Effectrix. Usually for my long basses, I will literally just take one of my short basses. Let's go into this one. For a long bass, I would just take one of the short basses I've made. If I was working in this track, for example, I had all these short basses, and I thought, now I want like a long sustained bass. I would first of all use the patch I'm using and see. That is horrible, but that would have been my first port of call. It would have been to see what the bass I'm using sounds like without any volume automation. Without any automation, basically, on the volume, just to keep that long sustain. That's so bad. So the reverb throws on these sounds are... I just have some reverb in Serum. I haven't been doing this recently. This track's a slightly older one. Now I would like to automate my reverb separately in the actual channel itself and have full control over it. But it was working in these patches, and this reverb adds to the overall kind of fullness of the sound of this track. Can we check the Serum patch for the main mids? Yeah, so this is pretty much one of them. So it's I can unfreeze these. I think they're all the same patch. It was a patch called Apparently Riddim. And what it is literally just a wavetable called Ground Pound, a wavetable called Formant Sign. I'm not sure where I got these from. They might be from a Cymatics wavetable pack. Maybe. I didn't make them myself. Why are we not playing? There we go. So let's turn off the filters and the effects. I guess we could just deconstruct this patch quickly. Right. we've got this ground pound wavetable. Already on its own, it has the kind of FM sound to it without doing anything. Then I've FM'd it with this formant sign, which just gives you a really crunchy sound. I've got a sub in there as well. The sub and oscillator area being, the level is being automated by LFO1. And then I have a flange minus filter there. And this is where it gets a lot of its really, a lot of the real crunchiness from this flange filter. And I think, yeah, so there's a comb minus as well. And those two together, along with some EQ, the multiband compression, the hyper, which really is just, both of these are off. It just is 35% of the mix. Just gives it a tiny bit of flavor on the sides. The reverb is the tiniest bit of reverb, but with the compression that's going on the master, the reverb really gets brought out. And then delay, which is adding even more of a kind of similar texture to the flange, like a really fast metallic delay. As far as the patch goes, that's it. It really only sounds good in that one place I had it. And then for the rest of the track, it's the same patch, just copied into different tracks with different positions on the wavetable or different positions on the warp mode. Effects wise, they're all the same. Yeah, they're just different positions, giving maybe and different LFO rates too. And I've got also this thing, just going all the way through. So yeah, it's all one patch, but with slight variations, and then kind of one-shot chunks that I can just drag around and create a different pattern with. And I do that a lot. I'll make my one-shot chunks, and then I can just drop them around without doing a bunch of LFO automation in the channel, and then needing to kind of fine-tune that to change the pattern. I can just chuck my, it's like Lego, just chuck my blocks around and come up with different patterns. Sorry, let me scroll up and see some of these that I missed. That's a good tip though. I do tend to solo EQ a lot. Yeah, when you're EQing, I mean, you might want to solo it to really hone in on a certain area, but when you're trying to balance something with something else, it's a good idea to have it all playing at the same time, and then do your EQ adjustments. Would it be a bad idea to make it good practice to just throw that bass mono utility on all sounds under 150 Hz? I'm trying to optimize my template too. I mean, I don't really think it's necessary. CPU wise, I'd say probably not. I'd probably say save your CPU for something else. Then again, I don't know if it even takes that much CPU. I probably wouldn't put it on everything. Just make sure that you've got it. Put it on your kick maybe, and on your master, and on your sub. Maybe on your mids group too, just in case there is anything down in that area that needs to be mono, but I wouldn't go crazy and add it to everything. But then again, doing it, I don't think you'd get a bad result. It just would be unnecessary. What does my automation look like for those patches? So that goes back to what I was just going over there. I don't have crazy automation here for the patches because they're all the same patch, but kind of slight variations, so I can just drag stuff around instead of automating the rate. For example, I've got one here, let's say on 1/8, and this one on 1/4. and then I could just switch between the two without needing to draw complicated automation lanes in. What kind of stuff do you have in the intro and breakdown as far as synths and samples go? Okay, let's go over the intro. We've spent no time in the intro at all. So the most obvious thing is the synth. The synth is actually just a patch from somewhere, from a Vandalism pack. It was just the lead. I'm sure I would have tweaked it a bit, but it's just really just a patch from somebody else. I've just added some erosion and a bit of reverb. And then at the end here, as it heads toward the drop, it just drops off in volume. So we've got the synth, the lead. I've got these like impact sounds. Oh. So there's this horn. That would have been a splice sound. Shout out splice. I've got this impact. I remember this piano sound. This is also from Splice. This is one of the very rare occasions where I just download a sound, drop it into my project, don't need to even touch any EQ or anything. I just dropped it in and put it at -2, and it just fits so well. Like without it, it still sounds like Knuckle Sandwich, but it just adds this extra kind of eeriness. But yeah, I didn't need to do anything to that. That was just a drag and drop, and turn it down a bit. There's a riser going into the drop as well.
Hey, yeah, hey, yeah.
So I've got this. This is from an acapella. I got it from the Looperman website, and just chopped out the AO, looped it up like this.
Yeah, hey, yeah, hey.
There is a percussion loop too. The build in this isn't that crazy. Usually I'll go in with like a ton of risers, a ton of kind of pitching up everything into the build. The intro on this isn't a crazy build. Let's get back into some of these. Yeah, absolutely. Do I ever mess around with trying to get variations by modulating the LFO speeds? Yeah, 100%. It's funny, but I don't really have one way of making music. Every single one of my projects is different in some way. Like I won't always use the same master and chain. I won't always use the same process for doing anything really. I like to try and keep it as open as possible. But yeah, there's a lot of tracks where I've got crazy automation going on. I'm just reading through some of these questions. Do I have some tips to save CPU? Get a good CPU. No, I mean, just try and do what you can, what's necessary, without overkilling everything. And by that, I mean, don't chuck an Ozone mastering suite on every channel. Like, try and limit yourself to what you really deem as necessary. I've had to free stuff sometimes, especially if you've got a lot of voices in the oscillator that can eat your CPU up. Why Knuckle Sandwich ever think of doing a VIP? So I did do a VIP recently. Somebody paid me for like a special version which I made for them, but it won't ever be released, unfortunately. It's called Knuckle Sandwich because Knuckle Sandwich is like a slang term for punching somebody in the mouth. And this song was like a punch in the mouth. Post-processing on the synth group, I did go over that. I'll be going over it again in Rave Dash 2, so don't worry. Resample, yeah, Rave Dash has a lot of resampling. What time are we on now? Is it time to... it literally is time to jump into Rave Dash now. How convenient. So, before I do quit this project and start up Rave Dash, does anybody have any other questions specific to this project? Alex, any other ways you keep it fun and lively in the studio besides doing something slightly differently in every project? Ways to keep it fun and lively in the studio. I don't know if this is going to be very helpful to anybody, but I do silly things like chucking a saturator on my master, really cranking it, listening how it would sound completely distorted, or I'll throw a reverb on the master and really crank that and see how make it sound like I'm in a club at the back of the room, or like, I don't know, I kind of mess around in that way. But keep it fun and lively. I guess just experimenting for me is fun and lively. So that's why I often start my projects with a different approach to the last. Top 3 plugins you recommend people having on almost every track. I would recommend EQ on every track. That's not really a plugin, but 100%. Now, when I create a new track, it will by default start with an EQ on it, because I find that's my go-to the most. I'm mostly EQing things. Drums wise, how can you amp them up and keep them on top of the mix? So the drums I went over at the start of the stream. The drums, to keep the drums standing out, is all to do with the rest of the sounds and the sidechain. As long as you've got that sidechain nailed and the song is balanced, your drums are gonna be slapping. Go rogue, flange automation on the master. Hey, yeah. Do it right now, quickly, before we get out of here. No one had another question, so we're gonna throw a flanger on the master. That's painful, right? Let's open up Rave Dash. This could take a second. It's a very big project file. Can you shed light on making your drums stupid slap? So yeah, now I can have my sidechain down pretty well, but I feel like I could do more. Yeah, I'll try and go into that now. Is this Rave Dash? No, that's not Rave Dash. That's Rave Dash. See, this is a lot more. There's a lot more going on here. Good night, Joey. Thanks for locking in, bro. What's one piece of production advice you wish you knew a while ago? Damn, that's a good question. There's a lot, but off the top of my head, production advice I wish I knew a while ago. Do it more. Do it as much as you can. What's the best piece of advice you could give somebody who's wanting to be on Black Label? I guess why would you want to be on Black Label? If you're writing good music, there's nothing kind of production wise I can say to get you onto Black Label. Just keep making music, and keep submitting demos, and if they like something, they will sign it. I don't think there's anything really I can't tell you try and sound like everybody else on Black Label. That would be stupid. As far as getting on to Never Say Die or Black Label, I wouldn't have any advice. For me, it was just chance. Schism liked Head Crush, and kind of from then I've had a good relationship with them, but I don't know how I would have done that if Tommy didn't like Head Crush. I don't know how I would have got on to Never Say Die. Yeah, Willie, I might need a second stream for this one. What can you recommend to achieve better overall loudness of the track? So compression, background noises. You want to constantly have noise in the background. This is a good example. This track here. So I've constantly got on every. For anyone that's not familiar with Rave Dash, I'm just going to play it from just before the drop. Let's go from here.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
And then we've got the second drop, which is like goes into more of a rhythm type drop. But for overall loudness, I find that having a lot of stuff in the background constantly really helps to give the illusion that there's just something always going on. So I always have these kind of down sweeps, like the ones that I went over earlier in my risers folder that I made myself an operator. Similar thing, I'll always have down sweeps, risers. I've got this, so I've got this, I've got a bounce of this vocal. It's just like a looped, heavily reverbed vocal, which I've got constantly going in the background. It gradually gets quieter as the drop goes on. It's really subtle, you can barely hear it all together. More risers. Honestly, I'd say just to fill a track out and for the background, just use a lot of white noise or riser kind of stuff. Sorry, I keep getting halfway through a question and then I'll read another one and kind of get myself a bit lost. What type of bass sound is your favorite? Growls, screeches, squelchy? Oh, that's a good question, you know. I think those three would be my go-to. Out of all of those, I'd say a growl. It'd have to be a growl. Like a good knuckle sandwich womp. You didn't add womps as well. You got to add a womp in there. Womps, growls, screeches, or squelchy. And then I'd probably go with womps. How do you come up with your ideas for melodies and chord progressions? Just trial and error. Just literally drawing notes and seeing what works. I actually, like, honestly, I rarely have a song idea before I start. And even if I do have a song idea, if I sit down to make that idea, it's going to come out completely different. I honestly would say most of my tracks, especially the ones that you guys would have heard, like my most popular tracks, are all just what I would refer to as an accident. They're all just me sitting down, not really intending to write anything, not really having an idea in my head, just knowing like I want to make a heavy growl sound, and then I'll make that sound, and then I'll think, well, I wonder what that sound would sound like with drums, and then before you know it, there's a whole track in front of you. Like, that's usually how my better tracks come together. What sparks your inspiration for this idea? Good question. 100% Space Laces and Excision, Rumble. If you couldn't tell that already, this song is very heavily inspired by them. And actually this vocal, heavily reverbed vocal thing that I've got in the background was actually, in Excision and Space Laces Rumble, you will hear the Let's Get Ready to Rumble vocal in the intro, and then the reverb of that carries on through the drop, and that's what gave me the idea for this. Yeah, it was 100% Space Laces inspired. How long did you produce before you started releasing, and what sort of hours did you do during this time compared with once you started getting picked up by labels doing shows? The amount of hours I've done have never really changed. I've always been just pretty much every day I'm working on music. But I produced for, let's see, I think I produced for a good 7 or 8 years before I had any releases. And importantly as well, when I was first producing, I think when I was like 15, I didn't even have internet at home. So I didn't even have a SoundCloud, I didn't have any social media, I didn't have a MySpace. I was literally just making tracks. And at this time, they were drum and bass tracks and like grime, UK grime, and garage. And yeah, I wasn't sending them to anybody. I was just making them for fun. And like, I just really, really enjoyed the process of writing music. I'd finish a track and just start another one, because the process of building to me is just so fun, and still is now, this far down the line. And I can honestly say that if I didn't ever have a release, I genuinely think I'd still be doing it now, just for fun. I didn't ever intend to have releases. Please answer, come on. I've been working on an EP for 3 years. That's a long time to work on an EP. Scared to release under myself. Have you sent to... Wait, what? I'm confused now. Why not? Please answer, come on. I don't know. 3 years is a long time to work on an EP. Send it me. Let me give you some feedback. If you're unfamiliar with Rave Dash, you need to leave. Yeah, damn right. Sorry, I'm quite far at these comments. How's your master on this one? That's a good question. So I've got this rack called Thick 2.1, because it is exactly that. Without it, let's play it without the master rack. Oh God. Something that's really important to notice is that even though there's a lot of stuff going on in here, it isn't taking too much control over the mix. It just really is about volume. If I turn it off, the balance of everything doesn't fall apart. Like, the drums aren't super loud and the mids are just all over the place. It still does sound like the same track, just turned down. And then on. And what we've got going on in here, we've got some multi-band compression. I've just got this on 20%, just to subtly bring everything together. I've got 3 decibels of saturation, and then I'm bringing off 3 decibels on the output. So here, I made Rave Dash before Ableton, before I had Ableton 10, and I wasn't able to do the utility bass mono thing. So what I used to do was chuck an EQ8 in, change it to mid sides, and then on the side I would take out. I've taken out 250 hertz here, but usually I'd take out anywhere below 150, just on the sides. I've got my 2 glue compressors set up. One of them's catching peaks, the other one's giving overall loudness. So both of those jobs are split between 2 compressors instead of one of them trying to do both jobs. I've got some EQ here where I'm just taking out some of the areas that are painful to the human ear. I've done another side cut there. More tiny little EQ adjustments. This would have been as I was probably listening to a reference track, like just before exporting the final out to send to Never Say Die. I would have had a reference track in here, which I don't have in here anymore. But these EQ adjustments are just slight things, just trying to get my track to fit the reference. I've got an isotope imager. Again, I'm just making sure that the lower band, anywhere below 355 here, is mono, and anything above, there's a tiny little bit of width boost on band 4, but I mean that's like not even perceivable. I've got a utility, so on the build, what I've done in this track, I don't do this in every track, but what I've done here is taken the mid-side balance down as it heads towards the drop. So the width really gets reduced, and as it drops it just goes bang back super wide again. That is really the master on this one. Literally, I've got another saturator on the end after the utility, just to soft clip it, stop it going over 0. And that really is it, a spectrum and a span, just for observational reasons. 18 OTTs. Did I have a good music theory background before I started, or did you just learn as you went? Yeah, so I had no music theory background before I started. I could play the guitar. I was always very musical, but didn't have any, how would I say, any actual education in music. I just literally started as I went, and it was tough back then. 17 years ago, there wasn't really any YouTube tutorials or like how-to rhythm stuff. So it was like a lot of trial and error. It took a long time to get a good sound, whereas now you can pretty much watch a few tutorials, and I mean something like this that we're doing right now, shout out to Defier, and yeah, it's a lot easier now, but back then it was really tough. A lot of time in my bedroom pulling hair out and just guessing, making random stabs at the dark at how to make sounds. Space Laces is the GOAT. That's 100%, I would agree on that. Do you use Reason that much? I used to use Reason all the time. That was my go-to. I would say everything that I released up until I think like UK, everything before the UK Cheese EP, even Head Crush was in Reason 5, like really old Reason. I genuinely don't know how I managed to pull that off. I just had a lot of patience. My demo email, I'll shoot you my email here. Oh, I've lost where I was now. God. Would love some feedback, maybe another stream. Yeah, I was thinking about doing a feedback stream soon. What would you recommend to get that balance with and without having the processing on the master? Sorry, I don't quite understand the question. What would I recommend to get that balance with and without having the processing on the master? Do you mean like how does it sound balanced even when I turn off the master? Because that would all come down to just the way that everything's mixed in the groups and individually as a whole. Before it even hits the master, it just is well balanced. So all of these effects are very subtle things, just either very subtle EQ adjustments or volume boosts. Do I prefer soft clipping or limiters to control gain in the master chain? 100% soft clipping all the way. I do use a limiter sometimes, but only if I see that there isn't much gain reduction going on. Otherwise, I will just straight use a soft clip and just cut everything off above it. Like here, I don't see a limiter here. It's just a saturated soft clip in the final stage of the master chain. Do I ever parallel compress? Yeah, I mean, technically, here I am parallel compressing because I might not have it set up in Ascend, but I'm only using 20% of the multi-band compression, so the other 80% of the signal is dry. So I mean, this technically is a parallel multi-band compression on the master. Sorry, I'm just reading Kunal's comment. It's quite a long one. How do you go about adding details? So yeah, once you've got the idea, do you just go back and arrange it and then back through and add random sounds? Yeah, so I will. Yeah, I'll start with like a basic pattern that might just be quarter notes. And I'll just go over and over and over, just trying to add as much kind of variation as possible, whether that just be tiny little tiny little effects, like delays here and there. How long did it take me to completely understand Ableton? I don't even know if I completely understand Ableton now. I mean, I feel very comfortable in it. I'm sure there are still some things I don't know that someone could show me and I'd be like, ah, damn. But it is pretty interesting because I'd never used Ableton before. I was solely in Reason 5. And then I bought a MIDI keyboard, which came with a demo of Ableton. I think it was Live 8. It came with a demo, and I tried the demo, and for some reason, just like everything just worked so well. I made a track called The Leviathans in the demo of Ableton on like the same day that I got the demo, and I gave that track away for free. So check it out on my SoundCloud if you haven't already. It's called The Leviathans, but that was the first track I made in Ableton, and I was just like, wow, like okay, I'm sold. It's Ableton all the way from now. Not everybody would have that experience, I guess, but for some reason for me, everything was just like where I thought it would be, if that made sense. Yeah, Ableton for me has just been an absolute dream come true. But I still don't think I completely understand it. I'm sure there's still some stuff I don't know. Head crush would be insane to see the insides of. I actually recently had my really old laptop out and I was looking at the head crush file, and honestly, it's just a mess. It just looks like a mess of colorful blocks and no real kind of, it's a mess. You don't want to see the head crush file. And I don't even have Reason on this computer to show you. can you speak a little bit on how people might focus too much on what other people are doing while producing and end up losing the love for producing the track in the process? I like what you said about you'd still produce even if you never released again. Yeah, so people focus too much on what other people are doing while producing. Yeah, well, I mean, if you're trying to, I mean, as I'm sat here with a project file that literally is basically a rip off of Space Laces, I'm about to try and give you guys a lecture on how to not focus on what other people are doing. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to do something that inspires you every now and then. But I mean, sorry, I'm finding it hard to answer this question. Just as long as you're making, just make what you enjoy making. Don't. Someone asked earlier, like, how do I get signed to Black Label? Like, you shouldn't really be asking that question. Obviously, I know you want your song to be released, but you don't want to kind of craft it in a way to get it onto a label. You just want the label to hit you up and say, we like this, we'd like to release it, and then you go from there. You need to just try and stay original. Just make what you like and stay true to it. And just whenever you're making a track, just ask yourself, would I do this if I wasn't trying to get it signed? If nobody was ever even going to hear it, would I still sit here and make this track? Because for me, it would be yes. I hope that's all right. If you want me to elaborate on it some more, I can. Thank you, Brock. I'm glad you think that. Where do I get most of my serum presets and wavetables from? All over the place. I couldn't tell you one. I mean, Splice is great, obviously, and then apart from that, I mean, Google. Just Google searching. I get more and more anxious to just get home and write, and now I really want it. Yeah, Willie, bro, get home, get on it. So let's get back into production on this track. We've got about 20 minutes left. Any Rave Dash specific questions are welcome. Let me look at some of the patches. I see you have a lot of detail in your cymbals. Can you show a few of those layers? These are actually just 3 open hi-hats that are on different channels. The cymbals are literally just the crash, standard crash, the same bad crash I use in every track. And then 3 open hi-hats with very, very slightly different lengths. I don't know if you'll be able to notice, but I've adjusted the fade slightly differently on each one. And someone asked, oh, the patches. We'll get onto the patches in a second. What do you do when you feel frustrated, stuck when creating a drop? That's a good question, because that does happen a lot. It probably happens more than it doesn't happen, if that makes sense. Like, if I sit down 5 times to write a track, like one of those times I might make something good, or even none of those times. But what do? Just give it some more time. Either go away, make a coffee, I don't know, clear my mind, or just straight up quit and try again tomorrow. Just don't force it. You're never going to force it. The minute you start pressuring yourself, like, I need to make something good right now, it's just not going to happen. So if you're finding yourself feeling frustrated, take some time out and come back with a fresh mind, you might not be so frustrated. Because when you get frustrated, you just want everything to be done like bang. You're not really feeling creative at that point. You're just trying to slam a track out, and that's not a good frame of mind to be in. Yeah, serum patches. We'll go over the patches in a second. How did I decide on the ending? What is the ending? Totally forgot. I don't really know how I decided that. I just tried to take out as many elements as possible to give it the feel that everything's over. There's this horn from the intro still there, but there's a lot of elements missing. You can kind of just tell that. You can tell that there's nothing else about to come. Like it just, you can tell it's the end. Do you pan your hats? Sometimes. Not like, did I in this track? No. All I have done is added a slight delay, or even an opposite delay. I've brought the hats 14 milliseconds in front of everything else. I don't really pan a lot, to be honest with you. Where is the high-end sound coming from on those basses? Combs, flanges again? Let's have a look. No, these basses are all sawwaves, sawtooths. Would like to see the bass layering. Why do you mono your cymbals group? Is my cymbals group mono? Shouldn't be. No, my cymbals group's not monoed. I like to keep my cymbals wide. So let's jump into these basses and then I'll read some more questions. So the initial patch of Rave Dash is this serum patch, which is literally just, if I remember right, I think it's two sawtooths. Literally, the meat of this sound is coming from the fact that I've got 16 voices on both oscillators, and like they're super detuned, and the width is almost, the blend is almost all the way up. Where's the... So it really is very simple. Two sawtooths, 16 voices on each. This is very CPU intensive, by the way. High pass filter, just giving some movement. Like very slight effects, a bit of distortion, a bit of high pass filter again. The others aren't on. Some more movement with the EQ, that's kind of acting like a filter as well. And then the multiband compression at the end. And that really is it. And then what I did from then was recorded it, or like bounced it down into this audio track as audio. So then I had, well, it started off as this. And I think what I did was go into here, and I think I did like a lot of pitch bends, kind of like that. Consolidate, do it again, consolidate, do it again, until I had this kind of really detuned lasery sound. Then bounce down again into another track, and this is the final patch. And really all I've done here is just a lot of EQ. I mean, it really is just EQ. And I've taken the width down a little bit because it was 16 voices twice on both oscillators. It was just super wide, like way too wide. So I've taken the width down here, added some reverb, But this is, so someone asked earlier about the reverb throws, like do I do that? Here's a case where I do. You can see there, turn the automation on. See the reverb throws here. And to give it because it's not just the same sound over and over again, it kind of has some movement to it. I've just, like, each of these one shots have been changed ever so slightly by kind of warping, changing the shape, changing the pitch bend on each of them, and then you're left with like more of a rhythmic feel, and then that is it for that part. Then the second, if you want to call it rhythmy drop, is this sound, which is this really obnoxiously loud laser. And I genuinely don't remember at this point now, because I did make this track about 2 years ago. I genuinely don't remember if I made this or if it was just sound from somewhere else. The saved here is squeak, but I don't know if it might be this, but I couldn't tell you 100%. I think it's that. I think it's this laser sound, just like stretched out a lot and just super stretched. And then I've got an auto filter, and then the reverb throws again. So there's this variation down here. So yeah, that is pretty much the mids, and then like we've got these little, oh, that's not even on.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
So this little part here, leading into the second drop. Well, not the second drop, but the second 16. It just is this, but here and pitching up. With a reverb, the dry wet on the reverb going up as well. Do you have any sample packs out at all, G? I don't. I'm actually working on a sample pack at the moment to give away to my Discord. I just got super delayed with that recently, but that is still going to happen. If you join my Discord, you'll be able to get your hands on a free sample pack very soon. Willie, welcome to the fire, bro. Just joined today. When creating the drop, do you fill it out with drums, cymbals, effects, or start with basses? Honestly, both. But I do find that I have the most luck when I start with basses and figure out some kind of cool pattern, and then I start adding drums to that. I mean, it does happen a lot where I'll do my drums and then write a track to that, but I just find that it's harder that way. Or, yeah, I find it more work to do the drums first and then kind of go through sounds until you find something that works. I like making some glitchy cool stuff first and then adding the drums to that. Super easy because you've got your kind of go-to drums that you always use. It's just a case of chucking them in. What are some of your go-to tricks you use for your bass variations? I like to bounce stuff out to audio like this. Even if I have kind of like the bulk of it in MIDI, I will like to, I mean this is all audio now at this point, but even if it was all MIDI, I like to bounce a section out of audio and see how I can manipulate it anyway. I mean, I guess that still does class as winging it, but just different methods of winging it, I guess. There's a lot of winging it that is involved with the way I write music. 100% a lot of winging it. What octave is your sub? I'm sure it's what is this in? Oh, D sharp. So D sharp 0. It's down there. I thought for sure there was a utility set to mono on there, my bad. No, you're good. I think you might have been looking at the master, or I had something else highlighted at the time maybe. Or no, actually, do you know what? I think one of these is mono. The one, yeah, well spotted. So I've got a wide one and a mono one, the same one but mono. So the hi-hat that's between the kick and snare is mono, and the hi-hat that happens, oh no wait, it's the other way around, sorry. The hi-hat that happens on the kick and snare is mono, and then the hi-hat that happens between the kick and snare is stereo. Instead of just having the hat going constantly, I felt like it just gave it a bit of movement to go from mono to wide with the drums. So every time there's a kick, the hat is mono. That's what I've done there. Both you and Must I get nutty with the stretching over and over. Ah, bro, I consolidate, I'll do some stuff, I'll consolidate, I'll do it again, consolidate. Yeah, I love stretching. You get some really good textures when you stretch stuff right out. Okay, Michael, thanks for the demos. I'll check them out after this. Can we get a link to the Discord? Sure, I can chuck that in at the end of the stream. Do you ever work from pre-made serum patches? Do you ever work from pre-made serum presets? So when it comes to basses, no. I make all of my basses myself, but I will use preset leads, preset pads, things like that, just for my kind of extra details. I've got a ton of presets that I've obviously looked through in the past and just been curious about how they were done, but I've always started mine from scratch. Any advice on how you come up with a general flow of the drops? Any advice? No, not really. So what I'll do is I'll start with a simple, I'll start like this, literally just quarter notes. I mean, this track stayed quarter notes, but from here I'll start to maybe take away some of them in places, or just add variation, but I don't really have a specific approach. It just, for me, it's all about laying down something simple and then taking the time to try and make it as least simple as possible. How do your drum creation sessions go? And so you're using the same kicks and snares from some other songs. I use the same drums probably way too much. This knuckle kick here is like, I think it's pretty much in every, like 90% of my releases have this knuckle kick. This is from Knuckle Sandwich. But my drum creation sessions generally, I haven't done one for a while, I will admit. I've just been slapping this knuckle kick for way too long, but it's perfect, it works so well. And this snare as well is a combination of samples and white noise and some claps, like heavily distorted white noise and claps. And then that's it for the snare actually. I've frequency shifted it to bring it down a little bit. I could have also used the thing, but I think I could have used the transfers here, but I think someone at the time told me about frequency shifting the drums, and I tried it and liked how it sounded there. If something ain't broke, why fix it? Exactly. What is the frequency shifter on the kick doing? Is there one on the kick too? Yeah, there is. So it's just tuning the kick. Literally, without it, the kick would have sounded like this. And with it, it barely did anything, but I wanted to tune the kick to the track. So without it, the kick is hitting the A. And with it, I think it literally knocks it up a semitone to A sharp. That's all it was. Just 3 hertz on the fine, just to tune it up a semitone. Do you have a session handy of a created snare clap, or could you maybe do one on the fly? Either one. I can do one on the fly quick. Do you want me to do it in a separate session, Alex, or should I just do it down at the bottom here? While I wait for Alex to reply, let me get the Discord link. Either or. Okay, we'll just do it here. So if I was to, let's say I was gonna, what are we doing here? Snare, clap, right. So so if I was going to make a drum, I mean, it's hard to do this with a drum that's already the way I want it to be. Can you go over this intro before this finishes up? Yeah, I can hit the intro. Do you sidechain your cymbals or dynamic EQ? I do sidechain my cymbals, but I will. Let's see here. Oh, so yeah, I've sidechained them pretty heavily here. In a lot of my tracks, I will have a shorter sidechain on the cymbals, just so they kind of ride over the drums and don't get completely drowned out. But here I have gone for the complete, taken out the cymbals for the complete duration of the drums. Okay, before we do this drum thing, let's go over the intro. So we've got this respace here, which again is just 2 sawtooths, detuned, slightly detuned on the second oscillator, which gives it that really greasy sound. I've got it filtering in from somewhere, yeah, from here, so it's coming in gradually with everything else. We've got this synth here, also filtering in. Wow, more of an ARP, okay. these horns are probably the thing that stands out the most. They're also filtering in a lot of risers. There's like a ton of rising stuff. Oh god, broke it. More risers, white noise. Something else that really filled out the intro, the build of this as well, with the vocals. I had a lot of vocal layers. Well, not a lot, but there's a few vocal layers like constantly going over the intro. So these are going constantly through the build. Oh, it hit that snare there. Is it 1 or 2 layers for the Reese's, or is that how it sounds after it's brought in fully? Yeah, it's just 1 layer. It's 2 oscillators and 1 serum. And once you've brought it up to the full level without any filtering on it, it just sounds like this. Yeah, just the 1 layer. You've got some saturation there, some overdrive. That's all just to give it crunch. Where and when do you cut out the bass in the builds? I'll usually, that's a good question. I'll usually, if I do have bass or sub in the build, I'll at least make sure that as it kind of gets towards the drop. Let's see, where's my sub? You want the level of it to, yeah, you can see here. So just before it drops, it starts to fade out, so that there's nothing there before the drop, and then when it comes back in, it's got the full impact. Is that automation or built into the Reese's? Do you mean like the wobble, the wobble wobble wobble? Because that is literally just a result of having two oscillators detuned. It's basically phasing, and depending on where on the keyboard you play the sound, you get like a different speed of phase. And that literally is just by detuning the second oscillator. So yeah, try that if you don't do that already. It's very simple. Get 2 of the same sound, slightly detune one, and what that will do is phase cancel against the other one, or phase cancel the overall sound, and you'll be left with what sounds like an LFO, but you just won't have any control over it. It's just going to be, the speed of it's going to be very dependent on on either the amount of detune or the note that you're playing. And today, I'll learn how to build a Reese. Right, I think we're good. I think we're ready to wrap up. If anybody does anybody have any final questions before we say goodbye to each other? It's like 4:40 AM right now in the UK. My neighbors probably hate me. Anybody have any final questions? Is there anything that you feel like I missed in this project that you'd like to see? Ah, Discord link. That is a good question. Let me just grab that quick now. Oh, drop any knowledge on drum layering. Right, I forgot about that. So, where the hell is this? So drum layering all comes down to EQ, compression, and saturation. Those are really like the fundamental things you're going to need. If I was going to design a new kick, let's take one that I haven't made already and just take two from like a random pack and try and put them together and build a new cool one. So let's see. Let's take like an old Vengeance kick that could do with some kind of spicing up. Like these are terrible. So what I'm looking for now, I'm looking for my low end third, my belly of my kick, the body. And what I look for is like a, I don't like too long of a kick. I like just a nice short third, like a that one. One of these sounded good. Okay, let's just take that one. Oh geez, right. Let's not have it go through the master. Let's take another kick. Now I'm going to find my transient. Let's go somewhere else for this. Now I'm listening for like a click sound, like a really clicky. A snappy click at the start of the kick. Wow, these are all terrible. Okay, for the sake of the stream and all of your sanity, I'm not going to sit there clicking through 500 kicks all night. But this is what I would do. I'd find one that sounds... I'd find one with the body, one with transient that I want, or you could even like fully just go in with serum and create a sine wave with a pitch LFO, a downward pitch LFO, like a and like fully just make your own kick body and serum as well. You fully can go in that way. But I just want to get this quickly done. So like this is a very kind of rushed version of what I would do, but I'd find a transient that I want and the body that I want and kind of merge the two together. And then before I would have done that, sorry, I missed out some stuff. So I'd saturate my transient, for example. No. Like get that really like pop in. Flatten that. Right, flatten. Thank you. Now you can see that that transient's a complete brick wall. But it's a really clicky kick now, like actually not too bad. Probably do with let's have a look how this looks. Oh, that's nice. So that's what I generally look for in a kick. Nice clicky transient, nice beefy body. You can do that with samples, you can do it in serum with a pitch LFO. Oh, we're still going. Thanks for staying up. No, thank you guys for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Hey, I'm always awake at this time anyway. It's not a problem. Those real rhythm hours. I'm just trying to get my Discord link for you guys real quick. Genuinely forgot. I genuinely can't remember how you get the invite link. Oh, invite people. It's right there. Okay, here is the Discord group. Jump in there. You can reach me in there. I've got a couple of different channels, like promote yourself, production chat, music chat, ask me anything. So you can jump in there and ask me random questions, or you can promote your music in there and stuff like that. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh wow, I can see a bunch of you joining in already. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Discord. I think if no one's got any more questions, we'll wrap this up, and I'll catch you all over in the Discord. Big shout to Defy for having me. It's been a pleasure. You guys have been brilliant. You've asked some good questions. Yeah, no problem, guys. I'm glad you all got something from this and had a good time. So I'm going to sign out. Thank you very much for tuning in, and yeah, I hope you guys learned something from this. Once again, shout to Defy. Thanks for having me, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.